Y'all ain't been.
Are we on, Gretchen?
Yes, sir.
All right, I have 4:35, and at this time we will call the meeting of the Kansas City Commission to order. And with that, Commissioner Ray, would you lead us?
Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for just a nice day outside. Father, we want to lift up our country to you and just ask, Father, we ask for unity. We ask that you just bring us together this time and just help our nation to heal. Father, we also ask that you continue to look and watch over those that have COVID and that are dealing with the pandemic. Father, we ask you that you continue to walk us through that. We ask for your blessings and your protection on the city of Canyon, Texas. We ask for your protection for our first responders and for our citizens. We just thank you that you have allowed us to live in this town. In your name we pray.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that takes us to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of January 11th, 2021.
Mayor, I looked over and if there's no changes, I can make a motion, please.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as written. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion passes. All right, that takes us to item number 5, public comments from interested citizens. Gretchen?
I did not have anybody sign in there.
Okay.
We do have a few statements here from the city.
Okay. All right, item number 6, consider and take appropriate action on update of Governor Greg Abbott's executive orders directed at slowing the spread of COVID-19 in the state. Go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Gary and I were talking earlier, we're under 15% for hospital capacity, so that's going to open several places up a little more than what we've had. So that's under, I think that happened, what do we say, Sunday, Saturday, something like that, I think? 30th? Yeah.
So as of Wednesday, I think is what Anthony's.
Yep, so it happened on Saturday, and they have to go 7 consecutive days at that lesser rate. So we're in the 7-day waiting period until we can reopen everything back up to more than 50%. So thankful for that. Vaccines are going extremely well at the hub, at the Amarillo Civic Center. I think they've given out 17,000 plus at this point in time, and that's still our main hub for the region, including Canyon. Hasn't been a lot of additional vaccines in Canyon. Those were initialized by United Pharmacy. I think they're getting doses for second round, and I think some of those have come in, but they're not as much as the first round. So those are limited right now. Other than that, there's been a very minimal across the board, and not really hardly anybody else has gotten vaccines in Canyon proper at this point. So we still encourage our citizens, if they do want the vaccine, that the main hub is at Amarillo Civic Center, and they've got a very streamlined process to go through there. I can't remember, did you see, have they still got vaccines right now?
As of this morning, there is.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you all. Kudos to you all too. We've got a button now. If you go to COVID on the City of Canyon website, one of the first buttons is you can get vaccine information, and that will pull up right away if vaccines available 1A and 1B and then repeat vaccination. So it's working to make that really easy for folks to find, and working also to make sure we get the word out, and with the press, I think we're going to get even more out there that this isn't just an Amarillo thing. We're part of Amarillo Area Health, but this is the area hub and all too. So I think they're doing a great job, and Casey Stoughton's leading the nation as far as getting a percentage of vaccines out there. But anyway, getting the word out, we take part in all too, and that looks like their long-term plan is the hub model, so versus the clinics. So
Yeah, we've done some more than larger metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
So things appear to be moving along. Our numbers are still pretty steady. Nothing like we did 3 months ago. So
Right.
deaths are a little up.
our active cases actually, though, I think we're 237, which is the lowest probably since October. So we're seeing some good things there too. So.
We are hearing that on the second round, I think it's the booster for the Moderna vaccine, that there is quite a bit of people that are getting certain symptoms from, achiness to fevers. So those that are preparing for the second Moderna version should take that under consideration and even maybe take a day off or two. So those are some of the things that we've heard. Some people don't have anything, but usually the first round doesn't really have much from what we're hearing on the first shot, maybe some soreness, but the second round is definitely seeing a lot more that have some side effects.
And side effects as in chills or what you might feel with the regular flu or so. One thing I know Casey Stoughton, Amarillo area Health's really working to get the word out, and Dr. Milton, you can't catch COVID from the vaccine. You don't have the whole virus there, so it's not like you have the threat of,
Like a flu.
right, there's not a threat of getting.
Still a lot of unknowns with the vaccine, obviously, with the duration of how long it will last and things of that nature. And then I know Johnson & Johnson is getting close to finishing theirs. They're trying to get an emergency approval on that. But I think things will just continue to streamline and get more and more. Hopefully, as we get closer to May, we'll have a lot more vaccines out and about at this time. But I think people are doing well. So I know the mayor and I have iterated a lot. If people in Kenyon, can't get in proper, they're encouraged to go to the Amarillo hub and get it. So.
And really, the way I look at it too, the more people who get the vaccine, the less pressure it puts on hospitals, the better our economy is and all too. So it's just better all the way around as we get the vaccine.
Our nursing homes and assisted living areas, I think staff and residents have all received the vaccine.
They should all be getting their second shots if they haven't already. I know, family medicine had the 100 doses 3-4 weeks ago. They're now making individual appointments for people to come back for that second shot. Anyone that they vaccinated is being contacted now saying, come back and get your second shot. Because in theory, there will be a second delivery to wherever you got your shot in your name. I mean, if they gave out 100, then they're supposed to get another 100 for the second round. And everything in Amarillo should operate the same way too.
I think that's it. John, anything else you can think of?
No, I know that 2,800, I believe is what they posted on the website is the number that they've done in a day. That's their highest number in Amarillo. But they're structured to do 5,000. So that the day that we move to 2 or 3 or whatever numbers when the majority of folks are eligible, they'll be able to crank it out twice as many people as they're doing today. So they're ready to go.
And that's another word to get out, I think, too. The 2 and 3 hour lines that were there the first week or 2 weeks are not there.
No.
It's a lot more convenient right now, too.
My first one got into me an hour and 15 minutes. They said they believed me when I told them I was 6 o'clock.
Good job.
Maybe it was the hair, the last hair.
I think I could pass with this white mustache.
That's all we have, Mayor. We'll continue to have a very structured approach to information as we push, but our website has quite a bit of information on it for others to go to. So.
Commissioners, any other thoughts or anything we need to address? Roger, I am hopeful it's looking like a better year on, just what we can do too.
Absolutely. We're ready.
All right, right, next item, item number 7, to consider and take appropriate action on second and final reading of resolution number 01-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon approving a project funding agreement between Mandy Williams, DBA K Company of Canyon, and the Canyon Economic Development Corporation relating to funding, building improvements, and business expansion. Evelyn, looks like you're up.
You're stuck with me, Gary.
Good, Tony.
The K Company's been in business since 1999. They were one of our first projects with the CEDC in 2007. They're adding an additional 1,000 square foot to their existing footprint. It's an $80,000 project, and our part will be $40,000. They'll have additional 24 new products and will allow more customers to be served at one time. So we think it's a great project. They've been a good partner in the past. Any questions for me?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 01-2021 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 01-2021. Any further discussion? Is it an open? Sorry, I had to think right quick, Gretchen.
No, you're good. There's no public hearing required, so.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. You know what? I'm going to abstain too, so it'll be 3-0. So. All right. Item number 8, consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 04-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon, Texas, confirming support for the proposed Canyon Lofts development located at approximately the southeast corner of 13th Avenue and 18th Street, and authorizing the city manager to grant a $250 reduction in fees for Canyon Lofts to meet all program criteria. Danny, looks like you're
Thank you,
going.
Mayor. I think in honor of John Burns, I think I'll start out with the invention of the wheel, which was in 3500 BC. Everybody can just discuss it.
That was truly an uncomfortable
Because
laugh.
John's got right on that stage like I do.
I'm
Those
sure
are
that-
courtesy laughs.
Yeah, thank you. Courtesy, that's a correct
You
word.
know what? That's what it's for.
I would suggest that Mr. Cornelius move on.
Yes, sir. I think that's an excellent. We had a group reach out and met with staff back on January 14th to discuss this project. And you guys had meetings from our notes and your notes from our meeting and your agenda packet. What this group does is they specialize in affordable housing projects. And they work through the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and currently in the process of applying for the 2041 competitive 9% housing credit. So what they intend to do is build a 72-unit, 3-story apartment complex just south of Cap. And you can see they provide us with this aerial, this blue markup. You can see the cap, and you see the cleachy pad just north of that blue area. Well, that's that. If any of you guys remember, that's where we annexed some property back in 2017. Evan worked pretty close with that group, and they were going to build a skilled nursing center on that pad side. That's that cleachy area you see. The blue area is what we're talking about. This is just that cleachy side is in the city limits. The blue area is just outside, adjacent to the city limits, adjacent to the skilled nursing property. Like I said, they intend to build a 72-unit, 3-story housing complex. They're just in that blue area at this point. Now, that, as I said, that site's not currently in the city limits. However, it is adjacent to the city limits, and I think as I understand, they would like to request annexation. They're in the fairly early stages of going through this process of applying for tax credits. I'm not really all that familiar with it myself. I think Joe may have seen some of that at his time at Border. These folks seem to know what they're doing, and very clear with that process.
That's to the east in the city limits? East?
Just south of the city.
I mean, the east side of the city limits? The east side?
West of 23rd Street.
I mean, but is the east side included in the city limits?
No.
No, it is not. They would be, the only place they would be contiguous with the city limits would be with that Cleach pad side.
Okay.
Now, there are you can see up towards the north, there's some development up there. Those are the apartments. That would be the city limits line coming along the south side of those apartments over there.
Okay.
And those are zone plan development. I think I told Kyle, one of the representatives of Crockett Engineering, that I think it would be appropriate if this moved forward to zone both of those plan developments. I think that would be ideal because RC2 limits you to 2 stories. And plan development, as always, in a situation like this, is going to require some specifics. It allows the city commission, P&Z, to set some specifics on what they'd like to see as far as barriers, et cetera, and to approve a site plan. So when we first got with these guys, I recommended RC2. As you guys know, that opens up to anything that RC2 will allow. And this is adjacent to a residential area. I think a plan development would tie in nicely to the plan development where those apartments are. Moving forward, like I said, I think their preference would be to annex based on our discussions. And this resolution would, is simply to confirm city support, which is part of their application process. They need that. They also need some county support. They also need letter of support from John Smithy. John Smithy would then, pending support from this group, then would move forward with the letter of support. But they want prerequisite for them would be to have the city issue that support first, and they would move forward with that. I think Chuck's been in contact with the county, trying to get a letter of support. So it's in very preliminary phases. The resolution would also grant Joe the authority to waive $250 in development fee, which just happens to be the fee for our zoning application. So, David Myers is right over here, and he's your representative group, and I'm sure he'd be glad to give you guys more detailed information on what the plans are and try to answer the questions. But we did meet pretty extensively, just talked about our annexation process, our zoning process, and then including utility availability with White Dan. So they appear very interested in moving forward with this. As I say, with this 2021 competitive 9% housing tax credits, part of those requirements, which I'm sure there are many, would be a resolution support for this bond. Yeah, David, would you like to add anything?
Hello, gentlemen, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Damon Admire. I'm originally from Dumas, but I now am a Canyonite. My wife and I just moved down here about 3 months ago, and we love Canyon. So we've known of Canyon, obviously, but we love Canyon. So I was excited. Usually the developers that I work for, I've been working with them for about 7 years now. And we build projects all the way from the valley in Texas up to northern Kansas, Oklahoma. And never in my backyard. So whenever we found out that we were going to get to come to Canyon, I was, hallelujah, we're coming to Canyon. So, the first step in the process in the tax credit world is the letter of resolution from the city. Without that, the deal's dead. It can't go further. So that's what MRE is asking for that resolution. be more than happy to answer any questions about either MRE or about the project, if you guys have any.
I will mention, this is very common to like a community development block grant process. We have to get all the same kind of application process in line. And these are low-income senior living, that's what they're aimed at, right, Danny?
So this is, and I don't know if the MRE group has educated the city on low income, moderate income, market rate. But this is actually the tax credit, moderate income.
Okay.
So it is not the lowest of low income like a HUD or Section 8.
Right.
It is the next step above, which is going to be limited income. But obviously, the income can't be too low because the developers do have rent restrictions from the state of Texas of what they have to charge.
Very similar like the CDG regulations. It all originated similar in HUD at one time. The low water income. And so low, like Danny said, is Section 8 housing, which we've all heard of. And, well, I think we have some Section 8 housing in town, do we not, Danny?
Not that I'm aware of, it's the Creekside, Section 8.
A lot of rural communities have poor poverty, low income. So this applicant has to go through all the same kind of steps we would do for kind of like a grant application. And so the only way to make these projects typically work is having this tax credit and making the financially working out as. Did I miss anything on that, Damon?
It's pretty close.
So in a perfect timeline with everything, when would you anticipate construction?
So the credits will be awarded, if our developers get awarded, they'll be awarded in July. Takes our design team to go ahead and wrap everything up. We usually close a project in December, January, so we're looking at end of 21 at the very earliest, first quarter of 22. And to build the project, I'll need about 12 months to build.
They'll have to go through several stages, Roger. So right now, they're in the application stage. Do we recall when those are due? The application to TDHCA, Damon, you know when that's due?
I don't.
We seem anxious,
Yeah,
so
there's
I
something due.
think it's soon.
Something
imminent.
soon.
Yes.
Maybe tomorrow, I don't know.
Yeah, they
There's
seem,
some imminency on getting this done soon for them, because they gotta get it in, because if it doesn't get approved through TDHCA, they won't do the project.
they won't move forward.
They won't move forward. And I think they're looking at Amarillo, and I think Amarillo and maybe from your Lubbock on it. I know they're looking at some others.
So right now we have the NTS building in Lubbock is a historic tax credit rehab. We're on that project right now. We finished the old Hilton Hotel in Plainview.
That's at Hilton.
Yes, on that one in Plainview. Those two. This one and Amarillo are the two up in the upper panhandle, and then there's several throughout the state that they're doing the application.
Plainview one, I personally have driven by a couple times, and it was an old historic hotel, and it looks really nice. They did an excellent job on that, if you have not seen it. It was a hotel probably built in the 50s.
So the hotel was built in 1926.
No, I was a few decades off.
So,
Probably
Put
shut
it
it down.
into residential housing, is that?
yes, so we turned the old hotel into tax credit apartments.
8 or 10 stories. Right, wow. It's easy to know. There's only one high rises in towns. Well, I know Chuck is working on the county. They've asked us to help on that, and then
Back there on the agenda for February 9th.
Chuck's working on that, and then Mr. Burns is working with our John Smithy's office.
With John Smithy's office is, if you all pass this resolution, I will immediately notify them, and then they will move forward with their letter of support. But they wait for us. They will not send out anything until we made our decision.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 04-2021, confirming support for the proposed canyon loss development and authorizing the city manager to grant a $250 reduction in fees. And your residents will have a front row seat to an amazing fireworks show if this goes down. So, well, you know.
I'll second.
Have a motion and second to adopt resolution number 04-2021. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, item number 9, consider taking appropriate action on resolution number 03-2021, designating a juvenile case manager for Kenyon Municipal Court and adoption of ethical and training standards for the juvenile case manager. Chuck, looks like you're presenting.
Thank you, Mayor, appreciate it. I'd like to inform the commission that Sheila Seymour Roach, our municipal court clerk, who has been doing an excellent job for years with the city of Kenyon, has completed her qualifications to be juvenile case manager. The significance of that is there is a $5 per case court cost that can be applied and can be retained by the city of Kenyon and applied to the municipal court budget for activities as juvenile case manager. In order to take advantage of this, the commission needs to designate a juvenile case manager and adopt ethical standards and training standards for the juvenile case manager, which are part of your agenda packet. Right here, the resolution number 03-2021 accomplishes the appointment and the adoption of ethical and training standards for the juvenile case manager. It's beneficial to the city of Kenyon Municipal Court to designate this designation. It's financially beneficial to the city of Kenyon. And I'm going to now call on Sheila to explain a little bit about that program.
Thank you. Well, so basically, this is what the court's needing to help with compliance with our juveniles and our minors to be in compliant with what is ordered through the court. If an example of that is going to be, if we have a juvenile and the judge sees them and orders them to do either community service or perform or watch videos, getting a no driver's license ticket, we have no resources here within the city of Kenyon to send any of the juveniles to be in compliance. We're going to expect a juvenile that doesn't have a vehicle to get to Amarillo to participate in Amarillo's juvenile case management program. So the funds are there. They were put in place back in 2019 with the legislature, but we needed to have the training. So we have that now, and we now have a place and a program that we can put into effect to have our juveniles stay here and get in compliant or decrease our show cause dockets because we have children and minors not able to access any type of program to be in compliant. And so that's why I did the training. I will go to the training again in June and learn other ways. A lot of courts are going virtual now. Because of COVID, it's kind of pushing the program, so we can have in-house or virtual to make sure that everybody that goes before the judge and is ordered to do some type of, whether it's a class, a community service, writing papers, getting their GED, we will have the resources and the places to get in contact with them to make sure that they're all getting compliant. And our kids need some help. They need, we got two, parents both working, and if a kid can come here and get compliant without having mom and dad leave work, take a day off, whatever that may be, we can do it. And I like working with kids, so I think this will be great for us.
I think it will be good for us too, and as you can imagine, municipal court does come in contact with a lot of juveniles. Given the nature of our work,
Second.
Having a motion and second to adopt resolution number 03-2021. Any further discussion?
Sheila, thank you for getting that training. And all that effort.
Good job.
All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Thank you, Chief. Okay, now takes us to item number 10, to consider and take appropriate action on enterprise fleet management agreement. I believe, Joel, you and Chuck presenting this, so.
I'll let Joel go first, and I'll go ahead and talk to you about the agreements. I think Joe may have some input to do.
So, some background on this, Enterprise came to us last fall, really interested in our business. If you remember, we do all of our current vehicle fleet purchasing through an internal service fund, the capital equipment fund. We buy that internally and then we pay ourselves back from each department over a period of 5 years. And then we either push that vehicle on into the fleet or it gets replaced. I think generally it just gets pushed on and it's used until it's completely worn out. Joe and I listened to a conference call with Hereby from the fleet management, and he kind of gave us a sales pitch on it. We looked at it a couple of more times with him, and he came back, actually took our vehicle fleet and analyzed it, and came back and gave us some pricing, and kind of showed us what it's costing us right now to do the vehicle fleet the way we do, as compared to using a fleet management system. In effect, we would be leasing the vehicles from them, and it would be a 4-year lease. They would advise us based on the value, the best time to trade those vehicles. And so at that time, depending on the model, some models are going to be worth more in the 4th year. Some might hold their value to the 5th year. So we might hold some to the 5th, but most times each year, each vehicle will be based on a 4-year lease. And then annually, March of each year, they have a representative manual that would come visit with us, analyze our fleet, and advise us on the timing of replacing those vehicles. Right now, we're just looking at doing this with 4 vehicles. But we would anticipate moving this to all of the vehicles, including the police fleet.
Excluding heavy equipment, so no fire trucks, no crash trucks, no back, transloaders, nothing like that, no heavy equipment, purely police vehicles and trucks.
And really, operationally, the reason for doing this is to centralize our vehicle fleet. As it's been done traditionally, each department has shopped and purchased their vehicle. Of course, looking for the best price using the buy board or fleet solutions. But as far as having a centralized purchasing program, we haven't had one in place. I feel like another benefit of the program is the maintenance. Part of the agreement is that we use their service providers, many of which are in Canyon, for oil changes. That's part of the monthly fee. The drivers of those vehicles will have a card. We'll give that card to the service provider and we'll do the oil change. And there's no payment out of pocket. It also covers 1 set of brakes in that 4-year life of the vehicle, and just normal routine maintenance. There's not a mileage penalty. There's no limitations on mileage or wear and tear. So that's a little bit different from some lease agreements you're not familiar with.
Mayor, if I might, I sent all of the agreements and contracts to Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool, which is who carries our liability insurance. And they looked over all of those agreements. This is becoming more and more common for cities across the state to do this type of arrangement through enterprise, and they were very familiar with it. So I think it's becoming much more common with cities to do this.
So we'd be looking at getting new vehicles every 4 years then, is what we'd be getting in place?
Not all of them at one time, but a 4-year life for the vehicles. So we would ease into it like they would do these for the first year. And then they would analyze our fleet and recommend which ones we should replace based on mileage and year model that they can get the best return on. They'll advise us on the next stage of which vehicles to trade at that point. And then it would be staged from there as those vehicles come in. If we got vehicles that are, say, 2 years old now, in 2 years, we're probably looking at trading those and putting them into the program.
Are we saving money or just getting better vehicles?
Overall, we would be saving money. We wouldn't have the cash up front. Rather than putting out $32,000 up front, we would pay the monthly lease fee instead. And just to kind of give you an idea, this is from the pricing that they gave us. Just when they did their overview on our fleet, they were looking at, we had, at that point in time, we had 9 vehicles that they were advising us would be a prime time to trade. And so one of those was a Chevrolet Silverado 1500. If we went out and bought that, it would be cash out $32,500. If we leased it, just going over that 4-year lease term, the estimated out-of-pocket cost, net of the equity, would be $13,700. So cash out. So that difference, $32,500 versus $13,700 of cash out. That's the cash savings we would be looking at. Now that depends on the timing of when we chose to trade that vehicle. And if we stayed with that program, because what happens is they take that equity on that vehicle and roll it into the next 4 years, the next vehicle that replaces it. So the timing of when we do those and get the best market value affects the lease rate on the next replacement. That makes sense. If we waited the 5th year and took some more life out of it, it might bring that fair market value down, which would make that the next round with that particular vehicle might make it more costly because we have less equity to go into that next replacement in the next round.
I had an extensive conversation with the City of Amarillo purchasing agent, Trent Davis, about Enterprise and this program. And I basically asked, why don't they do it? Because they have an in-house mechanic. That's why Enterprise can't be. Being that Amarillo has an in-house mechanic on site that's doing proactive preventative maintenance, there's a small cost savings annually. Well, Canyon doesn't have that. So those are some of the differences in some of the cities that we looked at. That was the main one. I had a long conversation with them because they had done a long analysis looking at that, and that was the big factor that determined why they did it. So I'm going to give you both sides of the fence.
Have you talked to any cities that do use it?
Yes, let's see.
City of Tampa uses them.
Yes.
I did visit with the commercial former client, C4. They've used them for a number of years for their sales fleet, and he had very good recommendations for them.
Yeah, I talked to the city of Navasota, with their staff. And he said the same thing that Joel just said. They're very happy. They've been able to expand the fleet a little bit more than what they had to start with. So, and I know we've been having early talks with the police department of having more of a fleet over there, and this might play into that if we were able to do have more patrol vehicles. We haven't met with the police department. I think we're meeting with them tomorrow morning to have that conversation about a fleet program with the police department. Right now, we just have, how many vehicles, Chief, do we have patrol right now?
On patrol, I think we have 7,
So,
not counting the detectives, all SROs and all the others. I don't,
we're looking at if we want to expand that aspect and have some police vehicles, more vehicles than that. So we are taking that into account. Those details are being worked out at this time. So those are all, that is also on our mind too, expanding our fleet program over there. But those details have not been decided at this point.
Move to pursue the lease program with Enterprise, approve the agreements, authorize funding, and authorize the city manager to sign on behalf of the city of Canyon.
Roger, and excuse me, I used out of order, but I had asked that this just be a discussion item for today, and I'd like to pull Cody into it too. And I guess, bottom line, I'm skeptical. I just, I've seen leasing deals before where there's an interest rate, there's an administrative expense, and then, maybe on a vehicle it's different as far as the residual value, but, I think we'd be at risk there, but, are they really accurate? I've seen leases where it looks good on the front end, but the residual value is not as good at the back end as what they thought it was going to be, so it's more dollars there. I guess I would like to continue, Roger, if you pardon me, I'd like to dig in over the next few weeks and maybe get with you all a little bit more, and I think
I do have Enterprise on hold. We can't talk to them right now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Or we can wait, wherever the body decides.
I'm not opposed to this at all, but I definitely need to like to see some numbers. What we're spending now on cars, because I know that our last city manager said the way we had it set up was the best way to do it. Now we're saying that's not, so I don't know what's right or wrong, but I'd like to see numbers both ways I can analyze and make a decision that's rational and good for the taxpayers. But I don't want to get into the cost of another $68,000 like we did last 2 weeks. So, without me seeing any numbers, I would definitely want to wait. So you guys want to do.
On that, Paul, is there any specifics that you want to see when Joel and I pull that information together?
I don't know what we're going to be spending on the lease agreement, how it all works out, as they say, and what we're spending now.
Okay.
With our, when we buy a car, and when we're making last, and what we're paying for service.
Well, I think what we may be lacking on that is because kind of what Joel indicated on the independence variable of the maintenance side of it, those are being handled by the departments themselves. Some of those numbers will probably be very old numbers that we'll just have to pull together.
Yeah, we have to have some kind of estimate.
Right.
I think we can model it both ways, the lease side, but then also the purchase side. If we're keeping a regular vehicle 13 years, what that costs to go that direction, but then.
Maintenance will be some teeth pulling to Joel and I figure out. That's him. He still has to spend a little more time on what we're currently doing now.
Well, the maintenance all serviced out for outside source.
Yeah, yes. Yes, it is. There are a few things we'll do inside. I know Dan's crew will work on trash trucks and things of that nature, on heavy equipment, but most of just the vehicles themselves are serviced out.
Yeah, the lease was just talking about cars.
Yeah, right.
And if they're saying we need to do 9, or we do 4, I don't understand that.
Yeah, we can, they're saying right now we're trying to do 9 trade-ins.
That's what I said, we only want to do 4, so if that's good a deal, I wouldn't want to do 9.
Chief, do you know other towns, police departments that participate in this program?
no, sir, I don't have any idea. I'll have that checked.
Locally, Carter County does it. I haven't spoken to them. City of Tampa does.
I'm not opposed to it, I just like to see the numbers and get it all out, and parse it out.
Sure. Do you want to wait on the phone call with Enterprise?
You know what, yeah, if y'all be interested, we could talk to him about some of the residual and what they figure. I mean, we could maybe come up with some of those same questions. I was, interested in knowing how they figure residual, what that is, and then, what kind of interest rate calculation and what are the fees. So,
It'd probably be best asking that now, so the whole group's here to hear those answers, if you're okay with that. So, let me give them a call.
This is Kirby. Can I help you?
Hey Kirby, it's Joe with the City of Canyon. How are you? Hey, I've got the commission here. You're in open session, so I know the mayor's got at least a couple questions to ask, and I'd like for everybody to hear. So I think the first question is, you want to talk interest?
What do we figure in the model, Kirby, from an interest standpoint? How do you come up with that number in the lease payments?
Yes, so the interest rate is based off the 3-year T-bill plus 350 basis points. As of today, that interest, the 3-year T-bill is at 0.19. So your interest rate that the vehicles would have would be 3.69%. I know that that's, higher than a lot of, government, municipal bonds and things of that nature, but when you put together the entirety of our program, our ability to buy low and minimize operating expenses and then sell at a considerably higher amount, when you smash in all those numbers together, that's where it's a savings for the city, if that makes sense. I know that's a long answer to a short question.
No, that's great. What about residual, Kirby? How do you figure that? How do you figure it on the front end, and then as far as the lease payment, and how does that work?
Good question. So the residual is, the way I did it was I'm depreciating these vehicles at 1.65%, which effectively gives it a 48-month term that sets the residual around a 20% residual. The difference with this lease structure versus, I understand you have your banking profession. You probably have done those, you are seeing those net leases, or perhaps where you're setting a residual and there might be penalties at the end, et cetera. This is a municipal lease, so there's no mileage restriction, there's no chargeable wear and tear, and there's no early termination penalty. So what that means is when I'm setting this, the residual at around 20%, anything above that number goes back to the city. And the mileage patterns that you all drive, which is less than 10,000 miles annually, if you think about it, these vehicles are going to be 4 years. You may decide to run them a little longer, so call it 4 or 5 years or so, and they're going to be worth considerably more than 20%. And y'all get that benefit when we sell those vehicles, on behalf of the city.
How do you sell them at auction?
When you get those back, Kirby, assuming you just address the call, you sell those at auction?
No, we try to hand sell our vehicles to local dealers, national franchise dealers, et cetera. We find that we're able to get, typically 10 to 15% higher than Black Book, which is the commercial vehicle index that we go off of. So we try to hand sell these vehicles, and we also know who buys, much older, government-owned vehicles, for example. So we can also sell your existing vehicles. It's part of that TIPS and Sourcewell RFP that we won. So our ability to do that allows us to sell your existing units and avoid auction fees. Sometimes we do use auctions, but we try not to. We typically are selling over 85% of our vehicles, by hand, if you will, to those franchise dealers, mom and pop dealers, etc. And we do comply with the procurement requirements of government entities that have multiple.
So, Kirby, you're saying then you're figuring this 20% to target what that residual is going to be, and If it's better than that, we get the benefit. If it's worse than that, it ends up costing us something. Is that right?
That would be the case. I've never had that happen in the 19 years I've known this company where a government entity is upside down on a vehicle at the end because you don't put very much miles on it. But even if you drove, 3-4 times the amount of miles that the city does, the vehicle still would be worth more than 20%. But yes, you are correct. The open-ended lease structure allows the lessee, if you will, to participate in the equity. So I'm not sure how far y'all gotten in terms of the numbers and such, but there was a spreadsheet that had a partial year's menu pricing. And for example, there's a 3/4 ton pickup regular cab that the annual cost inclusive of maintenance was $8,500. And then you add in some aftermarket that was included in there as well for $7,000. But the equity position at the end of that lease is $15,854. And so what we do is we take, okay, you've got your monthly costs along with maintenance, et cetera, and you add that up for 48 months, but then you subtract out the equity, and your net cost for that 3/4 ton pickup is $23,780 compared to purchasing it cash for $36,000. So it's just a cash flow model that, because you're selling it sooner, you're getting the equity back, and it reduces your overall holding costs, if that makes sense.
So do they use local people for maintenance or?
Yeah, Commissioner Lyons is asking, do you use local people for maintenance on preventative maintenance?
Absolutely, yes, and thanks for that question. So we have over 65,000 repair shops, and just in the Canyon area, I know that there are a few on our list that are part of the program, just in your city, and then we have over 100 in the Amarillo area, up to the north of you guys. So yes, and if a shop is not on our program, they can easily be added. All we need is their W-9 and their insurance information. But yes, there are, there are 7 locations in and around your zip code of 79015. So there are 7 shops just in your city.
That's what we take
We sure want to.
Yeah.
See that.
That's been.
And the maintenance is included in our program. So all maintenance, so oil changes, wiper blades, engines, transmissions, for the time that y'all have the vehicle, that's included. For any non-police unit that you do with Enterprise, we fix and guarantee the maintenance cost for the entirety of the lease.
In a wreck situation, what happens?
Yeah, so the insurance that y'all currently have we would be added as an additional insured. So I believe you'll have TML. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yeah. So we would be added as an additional insured, and in the event of an accident, the benefit to the city in this model is that, like for example, I have a lot of law enforcement entities that use us, and when you write a check for a vehicle out of your general fund for a police vehicle, it might cost you $40,000 to $50,000, and that comes out of the general fund right away. And if you total it, then you're out that, plus you've got to buy a new one. The benefit of this program is you're paying for the vehicle monthly. And so let's say in month 12 you had an accident and it was total loss, then we would work to get you a new vehicle, stop the charges on that existing unit, work to get you a new one, and then we would settle up with TML on the back end if it was another entity was at fault, or if y'all were, et cetera, we would settle up with the insurance company on the back end.
Subrogation purposes.
Yes, correct.
I would think for some of our departments, it would make sense to have an old work truck. I drive a 25-year-old farm truck too, and just where you don't worry about tearing it up. And so we have the option to go in and buy out that lease at 4 years to keep one here or there. Or
Yeah.
what would that?
Absolutely. So because of the open-ended structure, at the end of the term, or at any time throughout the term, you can always pay the vehicle off or take title of the vehicle if you wanted to do that. And so yes, you could write it, you could pay off that residual and take title of the vehicle and continue to ride. I will say that the model itself for government, because y'all as an entity have very the ability to buy vehicles for significantly less than they're sold to the public, just like Enterprise does. And so what that model does, you're right, you can keep a vehicle and run it longer, but the ability for y'all to buy these vehicles at such a cheap cost and sell them at such a high residual because of their low miles means that the operating expense and the total outlay that you have is much smaller than if you just wrote that check and, for that vehicle, for example, and run it forever, because your maintenance expenses go up and you're not recouping the residuals. So the model itself lends itself to replacing the vehicles on a regular basis because it's cheaper that way. However, if there's an instance, you are correct, if there's an instance that, let's say you have a Parks and Rec truck and, it's only going to hurt, let's say it's a cemetery vehicle and it's only going to drive 100 miles a week or something like that, and you wanted to just keep it as an older vehicle, you could certainly decide to do that at any time. And some clients do.
Is it always 4 years, or did you try to go 5 or so?
Commissioner Lyons wants to ask, is it always 4 years, Kirby, or is there times where you'll go 5 or 6?
Yeah, so the term that we normally use is 48 months. I do have, there's some examples where a shorter term is also better from a residual standpoint. I do have clients that sometimes will run these vehicles another year or 2 or 3, and you can certainly do that and just write the vehicle down instead of the residual being 20%, maybe you keep it at the 6th year and write it to 0, and you can certainly do that. A lot of times these vehicles, for example, that have 250, y'all had requested a service body reflected on the back of that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the vehicle, what we'll do is we'll cycle the vehicle out at term, but we'll move the body to another vehicle because clearly a service body has 8 or 10 years perhaps in certain applications of use, and so you're recouping the resale of the chassis, but you're keeping the body and putting the welding it back onto a new truck, if that makes sense. So most of my clients do that. Did that answer your question? I apologize if I didn't.
Yes.
Yes. Anybody have any other questions? All right, Kirby. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you all again. I appreciate the opportunity, and if there's any other questions, by all means, I'm happy to hop on the call.
Appreciate it. See you, Kirby.
Bye-bye.
Good deal. I'd like to, kind of study the models a little bit more and see if you have any questions, just understand, the cost structure on both the lease and current purchase.
On the, Paul, on the 9 vehicles, we were just looking at the vehicles we're purchasing this year. Yeah, and so, when Joe mentioned earlier, Kirby asked the mileage and all the information on our existing fleet to give us that initial analysis.
Before this year, maybe 4 more next year.
Could be.
Up to 9.
We only looked at what staff had requested. We didn't go beyond, we didn't go into their analysis, hey, we need to replace these 4. We took it from what staff's requests were. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, no, thank you.
We were set to buy those 4 out of the capital equipment fund this fiscal year.
Right.
So that's
How many total vehicles we talking about do you want these programs?
That's the question I think we need to put a little more thought in, Paul. I know if the police department does want to expand their fleet, I need to have a little more definitive information on what they want that vision to look like. And so we're going to have some preliminary discussions on that tomorrow morning with for the administrative staff over there. And then we haven't had a chance to visit with the rest of staff on that aspect. And we need to have some more of those conversations. I do think, kind of to Gary's point, there are some vehicles we're just going to want to keep and not, just kind of run into the ground. So those, trucks that we have taken out to the oil fields and things like that. I think we'll have a little better assessment of Joel's department working with all the other departments on a little more turnaround on these vehicles and not running them as long due to high rise in maintenance costs. I know it's not an answer, I'm sorry, Paul.
No, it's good. I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, just, I'm not opposed to it at all. I think I am. I just like to check all the numbers and make
make sure we're not making a mistake and just jumping on.
And if we ever need to go back, Paul, and want to stop, we can do that, Chuck.
And by the time we go back, we've done lost $100,000.
That is true. We get invested into at a certain point. Very true.
Which I'd like to not do, but checking everything,
Sure.
that's all I'm saying.
Joel and I will, if y'all do want to put on hold, and I'll let Kirby know that that probably was going to happen. Joel and I will have to pull some numbers on maintenance costs, get those, or what we spend, and we'll probably have to put that as a whole, holistic, organization-wide, probably not specific departments. We could, it'll just take a lot more time to get that pulled together.
And I'm sure there's some costs involved in having our way we set up now. You know, that is used, so that might be a factor.
Well, administration-wise, I don't think it's that much. Right now, we're, on most vehicles, Paul, we're doing, I think, 5 years is what we've been doing. And those have got a 5-year rotating, and I think that we have a 10 to 15% interest rate on those. And so each, to ourselves.
Sales, but that's still taxpayer money.
Correct.
And you calculate it.
Correct. We've had a significant cost savings doing our equipment.
So yeah, really, we're not costing ourselves interest right now going through the capital expense fund.
That's correct.
Building those funds for the next purchase is what we're doing with the interest rate.
So what, trying to think what that looks like then with that capital expense fund. We just have it, I guess that would allow us to buy more heavy equipment or something, I mean.
We could. Sure, heavy equipment's coming out of there. It could allow us to do that. So heavy equipment won't change. It'll still be coming.
But it's all going through there right now, right?
Yes, everything's going through there. And we have that schedule. It's in your budget. I don't have mine in front of me, but the full payment schedule is in your budget on our current program. So Joe put a lot of effort this year making that part of the actual budget. You can see it. So the ones that were for this year and the ones that we're paying on current.
Yeah, I'd like to see that again too.
Yeah, we can get that to you, Paul. Maintenance
I
fees.
know I got it. I don't have it.
What, you didn't bring your budget? We'll get that. It'll take a little time for Joel and I to run some good numbers that we feel comfortable with on the maintenance side. That's the only thing. And then we can send with you everything that Kirby's got, so y'all can analyze that for interest and residual administrative costs, service charge costs. So, Joel, anything I missed on that you want to mention?
No, we could also send that meeting pricing you referred to, or should put that in the package, but that kind of gives an estimate of this first set of vehicles that we gave us. Gives you some numbers you can kind of see what he's talking about with those answers.
And the 20% residual, so they're saying at the end of 4 years, that vehicle's worth 20% of the original value?
I think that's what he's
Is that what he's saying?
calculating with his payment. He's got it in front of him.
But y'all want to make sure that, 20% of the value of the additional value.
Yes, it is. I asked him this afternoon.
Well, I think if that works, then we can circle back around and maybe individually take a look at some of the models side by side. I'm a little slower, Roger.
I got you.
All right. Takes us to item number 11, consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 05-2021, a resolution approving establishing legislative priorities and adopting a legislative agenda for the 87th Texas Legislature, including any special call sessions and the interim. John?
Joe, you want to kick it off, or?
Yep, we're looking at a legislative program for this current legislative session. Lots of cities do this. I've asked John to really take the lead on this, but kind of just giving staff and us direction on what some things we want to look at. All of our directors out here are watching bills. John's done a couple of presentations. The last 2 years, the last 2 sessions, excuse me, 2 years, last 4 years, there has been a drastic increase, 5 to 15% more bills that are attacking the city and preempting city power and local control. We saw it with the property tax cap bill that passed. There's a lot of other bills that are really being sought after from the state level against the city. It's pretty clear. Annexation is another one that we had that happened. Building materials. So all in all, we're trying to keep up with this and continuing to elaborate to our legislative body that there are certain decisions that need to remain in here. And there are certain decisions that need to remain in these other rural and urban cities. And we wanted to put a nice program together to make sure that we're all on the same page. We don't want to have these going down to the bill level, and so these are broad areas that we are focused on. John's put some really good information in here. There's more information than you want to know. Texas Municipal League is on top of this. They look at a lot of these bills, they analyze them, and give their opinion on those. So a lot of that comes from that outfit. There's even several bills that are out trying to abolish Texas Municipal League and their efforts. The state is very contradictory on the way they do business at times, and that what I mean by that is, they don't want TML to lobby the legislators on behalf of cities. And so some of that goes back to taxpayer philosophy. We shouldn't be using taxes to lobby the state government. However, I will say this openly: they do the exact same thing to the federal government. And so the state of Texas lobbies the federal government with tax dollars. So they're out. They've been trying to do that for many, many years, and they have several bills on that, trying to nip those out. But John, I'll turn it over to you on some of the legislative programs that you've got mentioned here.
And Joe mentioned the cover memo just gives you some background of why we're looking at this. He mentioned the numbers. Let's see, and TML has seen a percentage of city bills related to increase from 17% 20 years ago to 25% of the bills that were presented in 2019 were related to cities. So increasingly that becomes a focus. And they've already stated in the webinars that we've attended and seen, and I've heard TML legal a couple of times already, that it appears that those numbers are going to continue to increase, that once again they're actively proposing bills that were not necessarily beneficial to cities. One of the things that TML proposes there in the middle of that memo is that they vigorously oppose any legislation that erodes the authority of Texas cities to govern their own local affairs, which I think as a local, I think that's what I want them doing for us. I think as a community, that's what we want. And then it states that cities bear their primary responsibility for provision of capital infrastructure and for ensuring citizens' health and safety. Thus, cities must be assured of a predictable and sufficient level of revenue and must resist efforts to diminish their revenue. Again, we have a lot of services to provide. The state does not provide those services, and yet this notebook is full of proposed bills already that would lower your ability or inhibit your ability to raise funds in certain ways, or the amount of funds that you could to provide those services. And the last thing there is they oppose the imposition of any state mandate that does not provide for a commensurate level of compensation. So just undue legislation.
Unfunded mandates.
So they take that as their stance, and I've attached a link to their document. Their document is lengthy, but that basically it all boils down to that. And so if we get to today, I printed this. This is from the 22nd. And so these were proposed bills that they've already categorized: property tax, public safety, sales, community economic development, elections, emergency management, municipal court, open government, other finance and administration, personnel, purchasing, transportation, utilities, and environment. So there's 96 pages of that, over 100 pages already, of bills that have been proposed. And the webinar, Joe and I, we were watching. Joe, I wanted to say there were like 1,600 bills that had been proposed already. In the last session, there were over 6,000, so they anticipate that number. So this is an early number. This notebook is small right now of bills that will be proposed, that will be city related, that they've weeded out and said are city related. Just yesterday, if you saw today's paper, at their, I guess, last week, Amarillo adopted a legislative agenda, a list of items. We've also seen something from Plainview Joe provided, where they have adopted something. So Joe asked me to kind of look at what we were doing and come up with a possible agenda for you all. And this agenda would be something that we could say the City of Canyon supports, and that we send that to John Smithy, our representative. We send that to Seliger. Fort Price doesn't represent us, but he's in our neck of the woods and he's our friend. We send it to those people and we say, these are some things that we stand for. As I went through these, I knew that we may not all have the same opinion of a specific bill, on how that bill works. So what I tried to do when we pulled these, Joe and I pulled these together, we tried to look for things that were broad areas, broad categories of types of bills, and there may be a couple of specific bills, but we felt like they were significant enough that we wanted to have those come in front of you all. So if you'd like to look at that agenda, again, it begins there at the top. We're listing those things that TML just stands for, which I just read through, and I think those were all things that as a city, certainly as city staff, we certainly support those. And then I went through and tried to find some things that we would support as a community. The authorization for cities to annex across a road to bring voluntary requested areas into city limits. We've already had that issue in here. We've made that aware. We've made you all aware of that previously we would annex across a road to get to property. Never have we had forced annexation that I'm aware of in the city of Canyon. In our 10 years, there's never been forced annexation. We don't anticipate ever having that. And yet now, we must have TxDOT's approval to cross that road. So our highways and roadways have boxed us in.
So was that a recent bill too?
In 2019.
Passed this last legislative.
And the problem was, not thinking all the way through that bill, they said, well, you just need to get TxDOT's approval. TxDOT's unclear of what approvals they can make, and they have stated, we're not interested in giving approvals. We're not going to do that.
Chuck, you had something to add?
Well, I mean, they take the position the legislature has not authorized them to request voluntary annexation, so it's kind of a catch-22 deal, because we can't involuntarily annex that roadway, and they say, well, the legislature has not acted to permit us statutorily to request annexation by municipality.
No express authority.
They didn't. The devil's in the details, and we missed those details. So specifically, that's something that's real specific that we need to have changed. And every city in Texas is going to be saying that same thing. There won't be a lot of, there will not be disagreement from communities or cities in the state of Texas.
Right.
There may be some other legislative reason that someone might oppose that, but certainly not in our case.
That includes county roads too.
Yes. Number 2, beneficial amendments to House Bill 2439, which is a House bill that Danny's familiar with, the building materials list. If you remember, we had an issue where as a community we could determine what building materials were used, specific building materials were used in our community. We used that specifically on the exteriors of buildings, and we lost that authority. We were fortunate enough, thanks to Mayor Lois Rice, that Main Street runs from where the sun comes up and the sun goes down in Texas. We have a huge Main Street going north and south and east and west, so we're able to enforce that up along Main Street. But in other locations, we would not have the ability to do that. Is that correct, Danny?
That's correct.
And so cities across the state have opposed that. The current legislature, the current bill that has been proposed is for communities of 25,000 and less. Now, I'm not sure how we decide that a city of 26,000 doesn't deserve that right either, but we would certainly support the fact that 25,000 should have that ability.
Yeah, that didn't make sense.
But what TML is afraid of or fears with this is that if we start throwing in things like 25,000, what's the next number? Okay, cities of 18 can do this, but cities of 19 can't. It can cause a lot of confusion across the state. So we would support some cleaning up of that bill. Again, additional support, the next one, additional supporting for transportation of projects in Texas, rails, transportation, we all would, that certainly would benefit everybody in Texas. Effort to ensure that cities can appropriately manage all utility installations within the city right-of-way, including the ability to charge appropriate rates for access to city rights-of-way to all users. If you remember back a couple of years ago, we had our small cell tower nodes that came into place. We only have one, but we had no control over that. We have very limited control over that, and that was in our right-of-way, and yet they really pretty much, Dan, could kind of put that where they wanted to. We could write some rules about what it had to look like, but they really could have done what they wanted. And again, cities across the state realize that. There is value in those right-of-ways. If you remember, we lost, AT&T might have been in that right-of-way for two different reasons. Maybe they were in there for telephone and for wireless. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but what happened was we were billing them for both of those. And then eventually the state determined that we could only bill them for one, and we could only bill them for the highest one. That we lost funding. Here in the state of Texas, here in Canyon, we might have lost $20,000. Big cities, millions. And it gave the state kind of control of our right-of-ways. So that's one we feel like is important, that we have control of that. We want you to have control of.
Another cable company is preempted at the state level. We don't have a local agreement with cable company. It's a state-wide.
Very limited amount of authority that Dan has had over the cable company that has been working here in our alleys. So again, something that we know would be important to us. Expansion of broadband availability throughout Texas and provisions of necessary state and federal funding for such expansion. I think we all learned how important broadband is thanks to COVID. We all knew it was important, but we found out how much more important it is. And all across the state, that's an important issue. TML has said that no way TML can be against that they just figured everybody's going to be for better broadband. So those are some items that we felt like we could support as a community. And then moving down, things that we would oppose. Anything that would erode municipal authority in any way, impose unfunded mandates, or otherwise be detrimental to cities. And what are those? I think we all know them when we see them. And I can tell you there's plenty of them right here in this book already. Number 2, impose further revenue or tax caps of any type. Knowing that, the 3% made a drastic change in our world. But for the city of Canyon, it wasn't significant. It's been a long time since we'd exceeded that. I don't know that we'd ever exceeded that. So our world wasn't rocked. But the day that it's proposed that we continue to change that or continue to lower that, it will affect the city of Canyon, and it certainly will affect municipalities all across the city.
One of the bills that governor has behind is those cities that do fund police departments. You know,
Correct.
Trying to limit the sales tax
Sales
back
tax.
to them. I don't know if you can legally do that. You know, sales tax goes from our businesses to the comptroller, and the comptroller sends those in, every month. And so that's one thing.
There's a bill in here that would propose, talking about law enforcement, that you could never lower the funding for the police department. Okay. The question came up. I was in one webinar that had it was all finance folks, and so they said, okay, we're going to build a police department this year. There's another $8 million for the police department to build that police department. We're not building one next year. How do we? That's not thought through yet. How do we address that? You're going to have towns that are going to shrinking cities. I think we can name a few in the Panhandle that are shrinking. If that bill passes and says you can't change that funding, we don't need 12 police officers anymore. We need 3 in whatever town that is. But they might be inhibited from doing that. So anything that would change our ability to do that. Number 3, erodes municipal authority related to developmental matters, including with respect to following issues: annexation, eminent domain, zoning, regulatory, taking, building codes, and short-term rentals. All things that through the years, each city has been able to set those things for themselves. We've been be able to determine what we needed to annex and what we didn't need to annex and how to annex. We've been able to set up our zoning regulations. There are bills in here proposed that would suggest somebody else has a better idea of that. And they're in Austin. Couple more. Anything that would erode the authority of a city to adequately compensate for the use of the right-of-ways. We talked about that. Limit or prohibits the authority of a city official to use municipal funds to communicate with legislators, or limit or prohibit the authority of TML to use any revenue, however derived, to communicate with legislators. In Austin, TML has an office that is 5 minutes from the floor. In Austin, there are committee meetings that are called that will adjourn at legislators' desk in 5 minutes. What they would like to see is they would like elected officials to be the ones supposedly that would come and do that. I find it difficult to believe that any of you all would be able to be at that legislator's desk in 5 minutes from Canyon, Texas, USA. And yet there would be a committee meeting where they would be asking for your opinion on something. A little difficult to do that. TML's there. And they're there to answer those questions and represent us. As Joe said, there is significant support for not allowing us to have that input there and have them representing us. I promise you AT&T will be there. I promise you Suddenlink will be there. They will not stop them from spending money or being there in the ear, legislators' ear. But what's going to happen is our representatives won't be there. So we felt like that was significant. Anything that sets new limits on the use of municipal certifications of obligation, COs. There's discussion of the fact that and we've used COs. We use COs to make water rights purchases, to make land purchases, because we knew that was of benefit to the city. There are those legislators that feel like that is hiding something from citizens, and that COs are not the way to go, and that we would have to take everything to the citizens. Sounds like might be a good idea. Okay. There's also legislation that said, well, maybe if we're going to do that we only want to take that to an election day when a lot of people show up. Okay, so that means in here, maybe we need to move everything to November. Okay? And if it's not in November, then we have to have X percentage of voters show up for that election. Not a bad idea, but it's not going to happen all the time everywhere. And when City Hall roof gets blown off by a tornado, that happened in, let's say, March. Well, you know, we don't have, if some of these things happen, we couldn't have a bond election until November. I'm not sure how some places would put the roof back on the building until they held an election. In our opinion, probably not a good idea. And the last one here, anything that would limit municipal authority through the preemption or super preemption. And Joe can address that more clearly than I can as far as preemption and how that works, Joe.
Yeah, just taking our authority away, they're taking it on our behalf. Going to John, some of John's talk about application certificates, you know, there's even legislation, I've talked with Gretchen, our elections staff member, she does a great job in there, you know, trying to move elections for bonds all to November, or moving all of our elections to November, you know, and there's a lot of that out there too. There's a lot of bills. I can't remember how many there was last time. Do you remember?
1,600 were already there. I mean, and these are just the ones that are, I mean, just said related.
Just related to us. So we just need a good, clear picture as we move forward. Staff, John will continue to be the lead on all this on my behalf, and obviously I'll be alongside with you. I need somebody on it all the time. But also, you know, there's a lot of police bills that's going around. There's a George Floyd Act bill, and the officer that got shot, I think, is the other one. The officer that walked in and shot and killed the accountant guy. I don't know if y'all remember that. Thought she was in his apartment, her apartment. There's several police bills that go around big time. And so I'll have our police chief watching those. Daniel watch several of the annexations and stuff. A lot of this we divide and conquer with the staff. And so I would, you know, going into this, I want to throw this out there, I would recommend, I'd like to have one of you kind of involved in some of this legislative approach. I know Cody's not here. Cody has done some of that. I'm not going to volunteer him, but I know he went down last session and proclaimed on several of these tax cap bills that, you know, that we don't support that on behalf of the king. I would like to have one of y'all involved on some of this. I don't know if y'all want to volunteer him since he's not here, because that's always the best way to do it. I will let him know that he did that fall. But we're going to actively track these, and so we just wanted to paint this clear picture. There are a lot of bills. John's right, we're not going to agree on everything on where we are, but we can, I think, agree on this broad spectrum.
We try to make this just like a broad swath of these are things that we felt like you all could support and that we supported. So are there things here that we listed that you felt like that's not a good idea?
I know there's an EDC bill, I think, on changing some of it with adding some new categories for 4B. I've got to have one look at those, but there's a broad range of these. But we felt, John did a great job putting this together on, these would be the broad categories that we as a body here could agree on as we move forward.
Very similar to what Amarillo did. I think you'll see some differences. They have some specific things. They're talking about their
Civic Center.
Civic Center. They want to be able to do public-private partnerships, so they don't want anything that would inhibit them from doing that. They had a couple of other things that were very specific to them, but for the most part, we fell in the same categories of.
I know I'll put y'all on the spot. I'd like to hear, is there anything that y'all want to bring up regarding these categories, or categories that we did not mention that we need to make a change or add on? So there's a lot of topics to be discussed. I mean, a million things. Enough for 1,000 bills.
And we feel so strongly about the whole TML thing. I assume you all do. I mean, we don't know. We're here to talk about. Do you all feel like that would be a loss for us not to have them there?
We're better together than separate. That's always been the theory. And it's interesting. They're fighting us to do this, but yet they're doing the same thing to the federal government. Hot, calm, kettle black. how I see it, so.
And TML is very careful about what they're willing to support. If you read their literature, they have a certain criteria of things that they'll support, and then there's things that they're opposed to, and there's a lot of difference there in how they get there. And there's some things that cities will fight about among themselves. There's going to be some more sales tax battle across the state associated with internet sales. We've come out well with that, and that's been a plus for us. But there's still another piece of that is going to pit city versus city and city versus county, and the whole world versus Round Rock and places like that. But TML takes no stance on anything like that. When it is a bill that all cities can't support for the most part, then they have no comment on that.
Much of them. Any thoughts? Paul, I see you grinning down there.
I better be quiet, I'm a businessman.
You know, I think you all hit ones that really have been maybe the hot buttons or the, things that we've had a lot of concern with in recent years and months. So, I think you have the highlights of them. So.
That's good, we need 50, we need 10, sometimes they go too far. We need 10 there. My side goes too far. So, part of it.
Right.
I think it all comes back to we don't want Austin to tell us to do what to do, all the things to do. And it's getting, this is the highest level we're talking to on bills. I always thought that was conservative value was local, allowing the locals to take care of their business. Well, that conservative value continues to fall to the wayside. So.
Yeah, they don't want the national level to tell them to do that and yet turn back around and control the rules. So.
There are certain things that apply to Canyon that don't apply to Austin or Fort Worth or Dallas. Houston.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution number 05-2021. It's establishing legislative priorities and adopting a legislative agenda for the 87th Texas Legislature, including any special session.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Cody, it's good to take that on. If y'all are okay with Cody,
We'll get
kind of being part of that.
Good man, man.
All right. All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign.
Thank you, and we'll try to keep y'all informed. That's our goal.
And I think probably any of us, some of the major items, come up, the revenue caps and all, we'd be glad to sit down for local.
Absolutely. I think John and I will continue to keep a good temperature on, and we can definitely bring some of those back to update on those progress. So we'll be watching it anyway.
All right. Item number 12 is consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 06-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon approving an interlocal cooperation contractual agreement between the ERPC and the City of Canyon for application assistance for 2021-2022 TXCDBG Community Development Program and associated administration and consideration of funding. Joe?
Thank you. I'm teaming up with Dan Reese on this. Dan's been helping me a little bit. I know it's been a very high topic with the commission to go after every grant we can, and so we take that to the next level. Community Development Block Grant, the regional allocation is coming about. We work with Panhandle Regional Planning Commission, our council of governments, to do those. We met in the fall to talk about the potential project. One of the big scoring criteria in this is socioeconomics and poverty levels. Canyon struggles in those categories significantly, which John Burns always says, and I quote, that's a great thing. But however, it hurts us in the grant cycle. So this grant is funded at low to moderate income. And so that's a national objective of it. So we fall short in that category a lot. And so Dan and Eric and I and tried to find a good savvy water project that we needed to do that would meet that LMI. And we've provided that to the best of our ability. We are going to have to go and do block walking to do questionnaires. The census data won't meet that, so we'll have to go house to house, asking people their household income levels to meet that threshold. So that's how far we go to get these grants. And some people, they're not so keen on that, but I've included the project area that we are looking at, and I appreciate Eric provided these for our staff. And so you'll see a lot of this is west of 23rd. We've got some 2-inch line still in this area. We're assuming they're probably original. But all the minimum line is now 6-inch. The water department has really worked to try to replace all the 2-inch line coming up to 6-inch. And so this is some of the area that we thought would meet that LMI data. We've also spoken with Dwight as well. This starts on 23rd, roughly by Kenny Glass, and that's the alley between 6th and 7th Avenue, and then 7th and 8th Avenue. It runs from 23rd to 19th, except for the southern portion runs from 22nd to 19th. That's our proposed project. Tonight, we're taking action on the Administrative Services Interlocal Cooperation Agreement with PRPC to help us with the grant application process. They do that completely pro bono, and then if it does get funded, we have them administer the grant for us. There's a lot of bureaucratic tape, kind of what we heard from TDHCA with this lost project, and they administer that for us. And they've been doing that for us since we've done this program.
And the next step after tonight on this and the next item is a procurement of engineering services. So it's a proposal, and we had, we'll probably have 2 or 3 at least engineers or engineering firms that will propose.
So this is the project we're looking at moving forward. Hopefully it'll get that LMI. We don't know yet. We're good to go ahead and move to PRPC. And if it doesn't get LMI, we might have to switch projects. So, speaking with the crew, we thought this would get us to the grant dollars that we're going to see. So, and there is a match of this, 25% when we get to that phase. And with that, that's
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 06-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon approving an interlocal cooperation contractual agreement between PRPC and the City of Canyon for application assistance for 2020-21-22 TXCDBG Community Development Program and associated administration consideration and funding.
Have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 06-2021. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. All right. Item number 13, consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 07-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon approving an interlocal agreement with Panhandle Regional Planning Commission for application assistance for 2021 TXCDBE Downtown Revitalization Main Street Program and associated administration consideration if funded. John?
Same as last year. You remember we were going to do, we were going to apply for this grant. We were looking at $500,000 at that point in time. We were going to do the east and west alley off the square, redo utilities, put the rest of the utilities that are above ground in the ground, and concrete those alleys. Turn those into some nice alleys as the square grows. Kind of the first step on improvements on the square. We scored low 70 on that in that process. They funded through like scoring of about 85 or 86. So we are in the Main Street category, which means there are fewer people that are applying for that category. There were no groups out here in the Panhandle, I believe. No groups got funded through the Main Street. I believe they were all other locations. And it's a limited number of Main Streets that we're actually competing against out here. So it is time for us to apply for that grant again. This year it's $350. So instead of looking at 2 alleys, we're looking at 1 alley. We want to proceed with the east alley, knowing that it is probably the most settled. Knowing that the west alley, we've still got some, we've got some open land, some unbuilt on things. What's going to happen on the west, we don't know. The east, we kind of know what it looks like, and we know what it's going to look like in the future. So we'd like to do that. We would be able to do that one side and get that done. We will again go out for proposals for an engineer. If you remember, last time it was Park Hill that won that process. So I'm sure we'll have 3 or 4 firms that will be bidding on that, not bidding, but submitting on that. We will grade them, submit that to PRPC, and be moving down the road on that grant. Again, if there is a match, I have that written down,
It's
Joe.
25%.
Okay, 25% on that, depending on where we go. So I would propose that we, once again, pass this resolution, which will allow us to more or less partner with PRPC and have them manage that for us.
Do we have anything that will raise our points this time, or is it?
No, I went through school, we went through scoring with her, Dan, and there was a couple of things that she thought might go up by a couple of points. Again, we are not doing a sidewalk project. Sometimes sidewalk and ADA projects are slightly higher point-wise. We're not prepared to do that in that area yet. We got this other thing we're doing, master plan. Once we've done that here in a few years, we'll be right back to do some sidewalks, but not yet. That's why we're starting with that exterior. The more we apply, the more we're turned down, the longer it's been since we've received it. We hope that helps us, whether that helps you in points, but at least you're looking like you're trying and you want to be involved.
We're going to continue to apply for these grants
Maybe we'll get
until the sun.
sometime.
Yeah.
We're going to wear them down, Gary.
Yeah, there you go.
Wear 'em
Good,
down.
good.
That's, any dollar we can get to this community is what we're going to try to do.
Now, I move that we adopt resolution number 05-2021, resolution authorizing the execution of an interlocal contract with PRPC under the Interlocal Cooperation Act for grant application preparation and potential grant management services for the City of Canyon's activities related to the 2021 Main Street program.
Second.
If I may, that's
Oh.
a typo, but 05 should be 07, 2021.
I'm sorry, what was that? Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 07-2021. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
We'll see y'all in March. Both of us will. Engineers.
There's a third grant that Dawn was also looking at. I just want to throw that out too. We are meeting on that one, so it's a little higher end dollar grant with text on. So we might have another one hopefully. But
All right, and that now takes us to item number 14, executive session pursuant to 551.74 personnel matters. Alternate municipal court judge, 551.087 economic development negotiations, and 551.071 consultation with attorney. What, Rick?
6:1.
And at 6:20,
Texas room is open today. John, would you wake up, Dan?
What are you saying here?
So we're going to Texas room,
What?